Stephen's Episcopal Church strives to meet the needs of the community by being a house of prayer for all people. Today, I talk one-on-one with the rector of the church, Reverend Shoemaker, for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Reverend Shoemaker, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you so much. Good to be with you again.
Oh, I appreciate it greatly. Needless to say, you are the rector of St. Stephen's Episcopal Church right here in downtown Charleston. And of course, as you know, St. Stephen's was founded in 1822 as a radically integrated congregation that strives to be a house of prayer for all people by living into the commandment to love your neighbor as thyself, of course. And also, you guys are very mindful of your roots. So let me ask you this, Rev. What's new, what's now at St. Stephen's Episcopal Church?
Well, Quintin, we have a lot going on at St. Stephen's right now. There was just an article in the Post and Courier about renovations that we have begun to do on our campus. We are in the middle of a capital campaign right now, hoping to raise $2 million to help to not just refurbish, but in some ways expand the space that we have on our campus. To be more accessible, to meet our needs as a growing congregation, and to leverage some of our space to reach out to new populations, like an emerging ministry that we have in partnership with St. Matthew's Lutheran Church on King Street, to college students. And we are beginning services in the evenings each Sunday night at 7:30 p.m. at St. Stephen's for students at the College of Charleston. So we've got a lot going on, and we are trying in a new time and place to live into our historic mission to be a house of prayer for all people.
And Rev, where exactly do you want to expand on campus as far as St. Stephen's Episcopal Church?
Sure. Well, we sit in a pretty tight space downtown. And what we're hoping to do, we've begun to do needed renovations on the church building itself. We are hoping to expand the space around our choir loft by shifting the positioning of our organs so that our growing choir can have better sight lines to our organist and choir master. The building behind the church, which is currently our office suite and is insufficient for the staff we have now, is going to be expanded out just a bit into our garden and will be a fellowship space in the heart of our campus that can be used for fellowship and programming and even mission, and will flow out nicely into our garden that we also hope to refurbish. A couple years ago, we fully renovated our classroom spaces, but we have some accessibility issues. We're going to be moving our offices into the building we own facing Society Street on the second floor. We're going to be putting in an elevator to solve accessibility there into our upstairs classrooms, and we'll have more space on the bottom floor for mission and ministry. And then the top floor of the building we own facing Society Street, we are partnering with our diocese and our still relatively new bishop to hopefully eventually house a chaplain to the College of Charleston who could live up there. It could be a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment.
Wow. So what exactly are the accessibility issues right now, Rev?
Well, there are accessibility issues to get into our fellowship space that we currently have for anybody who is handicapped or disabled in any way. We renovated our upstairs classroom spaces a couple of years ago, but there is no way to get up there if you have real physical limitations. And, I really feel like accessibility to those with physical limitations, that's a justice issue. And if we are to be a house of prayer for all people, then that should also mean people that have those limitations. And so we're wanting to figure out a way that works for us on the campus so that everybody can truly feel welcome when they come to St. Stephen's.
And obviously you've been there for a long time as rector. So from the time that you started as rector to right now, Rev, how much has the congregation grown?
Well, Quintin, we've just about doubled in size in the time that I have been here. I'm in the beginning of my 7th year now as rector of St. Stephen's. We've had increased giving. Our staff has doubled in size. I'm very proud of what God has been up to at St. Stephen's, particularly given trends in the wider church. There's a lot of churches that have faced issues, have had to even close their doors. COVID, of course, was a real challenge. But we found ways to continue to push forward during COVID, and we're grateful to find people who could help us move quickly to a digital ministry. And so, we were able to navigate that time pretty well. And so we've really been growing tremendously on every metric that you would usually look at to traditionally measure a church's health.
And what exactly is your church's health?
I think St. Stephen's is quite healthy. We are on firm financial footing. We're on such a strong footing that we're able to come close already to realizing the goals for this capital campaign. We are in the public phase now of that campaign, and are nearly 90% to realizing our primary goal. I think we have a really wonderful team in place in our church staff. We're growing with families. We started a service geared towards young families a couple of years ago at 9 o'clock, and that service has seen tremendous growth since then. So I think St. Stephen's is in a very strong place, and I think who we are as a congregation positions us well for what I would call the changing face of Charleston. There's lots of people moving into Charleston, lots of people moving in from different parts of the country. And I think there's a lot of people who are looking for a faith community like ours that's warm, that's inviting, that's inclusive, that's justice-minded. And so I think we're trying through this campaign to position ourselves to accommodate the growth that we're seeing.
And where else do you see that growth headed, Rev?
Well, I'm hoping that we can continue to develop the ministries and the mission of the church through the growth that we're seeing. We are very active members of the Charleston Area Justice Ministry. I currently serve with Pastor Byron Benton as co-president of the Justice Ministry. We're very active with Neighbors Together, which is a local agency that meets those who are hungry, who are homeless, who are in vulnerable places. We participate regularly in a feeding program there. We also continue to try to support children on the East Side through work at St. Julian Divine Community Center. We're also hoping to continue to support students at your alma mater, Sanders Clyde Elementary School, through a new program to support children in math there. We have the ministry to the college that I really think has all the potential in the world. And we continue at St. Stephen's to continue to strive for justice when it comes to LGBTQ people as well as people of color. So I think we have a lot of areas that are important to us when it comes to our mission priorities, and I'd love to see those continue to flourish while we continue to see this growth.
And Rev, you mentioned earlier in this particular interview about the new population that you all are attracting and trying to recruit to your particular church. So, and you just mentioned obviously the LGBTQ and the people of color. So how many of those people have actually joined your church as members?
Well, on the LGBTQ front, we are today probably as much as 35% LGBTQ. St. Stephen's long has been known as a church that fully embraces that community in our city. I think since the late 80s, early 90s, we've had that reputation. The Charleston Pride Parade is something that we have a very visible presence in. We have many members who are very supportive of organizations like AFA, like We Are Family, that try to advocate and support people in the LGBTQ community. We were at one point historically an African American church. For about 60, 70 years, we were an entirely black Episcopal church. The neighborhood around us gentrified, and so those demographics changed. But I would say that on our rolls, we're probably still about 10 to 12% people of color in our congregation as well. So for the Episcopal Church, I think we have a lot of diversity in our community.
And Rev, where do you see these demographics heading next when it comes to that diversity?
Well, I believe that Charleston is continuing to become a more diverse community. Not maybe not as much downtown because of the soaring prices of homes, but in the surrounding community that we certainly service at St. Stephen's, I think again there's lots of people coming into Charleston. The population of Charleston continues to grow, and so I do think that churches like ours are well positioned to welcome and embrace a more diverse Charleston community, because I do think that that diversity is continuing to evolve over time.
And I know, obviously, you all service a whole lot of people. So, what is your approach to transforming and focusing discipleship training on the missionary culture and provide more opportunities and ways for your members to be transformed in their faith and maturity as a disciple of Jesus Christ?
That's a wonderful question, Quintin. We have ministries of welcome and incorporation. We have a lot of adult education offerings now. That's something that I have tried while I've been the priest here to develop. So there are lots of opportunities, not just on Sunday morning, but during the week for members of the congregation to grow in their faith, sometimes in person, sometimes online. I think that's been a plus of the time we had to navigate during the pandemic, is we have moved to sort of a hybrid format. We live stream each and every Sunday. We have an extended family of faith, some of whom might not even be in Charleston, who continue to stay in touch with us through our live streaming. We have Zoom small groups as well as in-person groups. So I think there's lots of opportunities for folks to grow in their faith, to engage in our missions, but we're continuing to try to work on that, because I do think that the question you ask is a really good one for every faith community to think about, because there's always new people coming through the door, and sometimes the congregation can begin to fall back on information that they assume everybody knows, but you've always got to be willing to continue to reintroduce people to the ministries of the church, so that those who are new can find their way in.
And I wanted to ask you this too, Rev, but what tools do you use to mobilize and transform hearts to Jesus Christ?
Well, I think we certainly start with the Bible, and we certainly have a regular Bible study in the congregation. I think that I'm a believer that mission work is a way to grow closer to God by growing closer to our neighbor. I think that is reflected in our preaching, in many of our offerings. So I think that as people begin to be a part of our fellowship of faith, I think that's a message that begins to get communicated. That's an important part of who we are called to be a house of prayer for all people, not just for the people who walk in our doors, but also for the people of our neighborhood and our city and our surrounding community. I believe that is a part of what it means to be a disciple of Christ. One of my favorite verses of Scripture comes from the prophet Jeremiah. Seek the welfare of the city where I have put you, for in its welfare you will find your welfare. And I think we try to live that out in all of our worship and programming and ministry at St. Stephen's.
And I hate to be redundant, Rev, but how has St. Stephen's actually found its welfare?
I think we have found our welfare, Quintin, by leaning into the very best of who we've been called to be since our founding. I think that, as you said in the introduction, St. Stephen's has an inspiring history. We were founded by three laywomen in the 19th century. as a mission to the poor and the marginalized of the city, etched into the edifice of the original St. Stephen's, which was built down by the market in 1822, were the words from the prophet Isaiah, "My house shall be a house of prayer for all people." Those words continue to be etched into the building that we've been in since 1836. And I think at every step of our congregational life, if you look at the history of St. Stephen's, we have strived to continue to reach out to marginalized populations in our community, in our wider world. And I think when we do that, Quintin, when we are true to our calling, when we are true to our vocation, I think that helps us be the best version of ourselves, the best version of the people of God that we are called to be in this place.
And obviously, you know a whole lot about culture. So, what is life as a cultural Christian, and what is life as a believer of Jesus Christ?
That's an interesting question. I mean, I certainly would believe that as Christians, we guard, of course, the firm traditions of the faith reflected for me in the historic creeds of the church. We certainly proclaim Jesus as the very center of all that we say and do. And yet, as Episcopalians, in our tradition, I think we are a tradition that believes that a church needs to be responsive to the evolving times and place in which it finds itself. I think you have to figure out how to guard the foundation of the faith while also being open-minded and welcoming to the changing times. I think that's the Episcopal Church at its best, and I think that's certainly St. Stephen's at its best. But it's a balancing act, and I think that it takes a community of faith that is journeying faithfully together, grounded in Scripture, worshiping together regularly, to do that kind of discernment work in a faithful and authentic way.
And I know your hands are getting tired from holding the phone, so I got one last question for you.
Sure.
But let me ask you, how has St. Stephen's actually adapted to those changing times that we are living in currently?
I think St. Stephen's is a model example of a church that has adapted well to the changing times. I mean, when you look back at the 1980s, about a generation ago, St. Stephen's at that point was a small congregation in a gentrifying neighborhood that at one point was really nearing having to close its doors. But the congregation at the time, the leadership of that church made the decision, the faithful decision, the courageous decision to move towards integration. And you had at that point in time, and we made newspaper headlines at that time, you had the all-black membership of St. Stephen's welcoming integration, welcoming and intentionally inviting white members into our pews. And I would say for nearly 20 years, 15, 20 years, had you walked into St. Stephen's at that time, we would have been nearly 50-50 racially diverse. Then, as I already said, in the late 1980s, early 1990s, because of the population that was moving into the neighborhood, we developed a reputation as being a welcoming space for LGBTQ people. I think in more recent years, we've been trying to grow in our ability to accommodate young families. We're reaching out now through this capital campaign to try to reach out to college students. I think a church always has to be looking at the next opportunity, the next mission opportunity to look outside of itself and find a way to meet people where they are and bring the gospel to those people, bring the welcome and embrace of Jesus Christ to people in a new time and place. And I think St. Stephen's has done that for many, many decades and continues to strive to do that today.
Reverend Adam Shoemaker with St. Stephen's Episcopal Church, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thanks so much, Quintin. It was a pleasure to be back with you.
Likewise.